Good morning. It's a great, thank you very much for this kind invitation to join you this morning. It's a great honor to be here. It's a great pleasure to be in this magnificent city. I have to say that yesterday, Jan took us for a walking tour of the government buildings, and they made a singular impression of I don't think I've ever seen a seat of government that was quite as humane and quite as elegant and stately, yet in an understated way. It seemed to me emblematic of a certain style of governance and a certain compassion in the society that made a very favorable impression on me. I'm used to grandiose Greco-Roman Capitol buildings that even our state capitals in America seem to have, and this was a pleasant and exhilarating change, I must say. My topic today is the challenges to the future of ethical journalism posed in the new media age. And before I start, let me alert you to two important sources of bias in my talk. The first is a cultural and ethnocentric one. The observations I'm going to offer are based largely on what has been happening in my country, the United States. Now, it is not always the case that bad things happen first in the United States. Reality television, for instance, was, I think, Holland's contribution to the decline of Western civilization. Every country's gift to the world is somewhat double-edged. I mean, we do have you to thank for Rembrandt and Heineken and Vermeer, but then you've also given us Rutger Hauer. But my reference point here in sum is American, and that means that, for instance, I have little to offer and much to learn when it comes to understanding the role of journalism trade unions in enforcing rules of ethics and rules of professionalism. That's because in my country the unions are weak and are directed almost exclusively at bread and butter issues of wages, working conditions, and lately severance packages. So just as you're graciously allowing me to speak to you in my language, I hope you'll show similar forbearance and understanding if some of my observations about journalism bear the unmistakable stamp made in the USA. But I do think we have plenty in common. A second bias is harder to control for. It's a kind of toxic nostalgia. People who fret over journalism ethics are especially susceptible to the belief that standards are falling precipitously, that people used to care about rights and wrongs more than they do now, that journalism used to be more honest, more honorable, more dedicated, and now the professional world is going to hell. Now this is partly a function of age. The older we get, the better we were. Partly it's a function of this brutal wave of industrial contraction in which a generation of deeply committed people have been prematurely discarded and are understandably bitter. These are my friends. And partly it's a kind of twitchy hostility toward powerful and glittering technologies that we never used. My own view is that journalism has always been a deeply troubled practice, given to arrogance, excessive deference to authority, reliance on formula, herding, a tendency either to snarl or to fawn, as Churchill once unkindly characterized his enemies, the Germans, either at your feet or at your throat. And subject to an industrial context in which coverage is consistently guided by an imperative to be an effective vehicle for advertising. So by criticizing the present and raising concerns about the future, I do not intend to glorify the past. And I don't wish to suggest that the Ancien Régime was in some overall way morally superior to the pups and twittering upstarts who've stormed the Winter Palace and made off with the imperial spoons. So to my topic. Today I want to deal with the powerful wave of exuberance surrounding the digital revolution. Of course, this is nothing new. Technological innovation in the communications field, more so than any other field I can think of, always has given rise to outsized expectations of social transformation and miracles. The telegraph would knit the world together. Wireless telegraphy would usher in a new era of maritime safety. Sorry, Titanic. Radio broadcasting would bring high culture to the masses. Filmmakers would chronicle the lives of fellow humans too remote for us to experience firsthand. Television would eliminate illiteracy and turn every living room into a classroom. Wideband cable would lead to a wired nation and direct democracy. Satellites would create the global village. The internet would universalize knowledge and destroy the corrupt priesthoods built on informational monopolies. And I think millennialist rhetoric, utopianist rhetoric, is deeply revealing of yearnings and ambitions, and is something to applaud as long as we don't mistake it for a description of reality. But more importantly, these examples of unfulfilled prophecies remind us that technologies by themselves do nothing but offer a range of possibilities. Just as people are wrong to mistake technology for magic, so we would be wrong to blame technology for some of the bad things I'm about to talk about. The problem isn't with the tools, it's with the policies they are meant to serve. On both sides of the ledger, you need to look at the institutional, economic, professional interests technology is being asked to promote and protect. Now then, let me tell you about a young woman named Alana Taylor. She was in her third year as a journalism and history major at New York University, one of my country's more eminent communications schools, among other things. This was September 2008, and she accepted an invitation from Media Shift. Now, Media Shift was a website affiliated with the Public Broadcasting Service, the principal non-commercial television network in the United States. Alana Taylor would work as a, quote, embedded blogger, and she would share her experiences and observations on the new media scene as an online commentator. The mission of Media Shift is to, quote, track how digital media technologies and techniques, such as weblogs, RSS, podcasting, citizen journalism, wikis, news aggregators, and video repositories are changing the world. That's a quote. Now, Alana Taylor was a prize catch. She had a personal blog, which included videos she produced and posted. She Twittered. She blogged for the social media site Mashable. She did marketing for yet another network, social media site. So off she went to her NYU class, a seminar about her generation called Marketing to Gen Y, aka quarter-lifers. I don't know what any of that means. I think Gen Y are my children's generation. I'm not quite sure, because then there's Z. And I don't know if they start over with A or double A or A prime, I don't know. Anyway, so she wrote a scathing post for Media Shift. Goes to her class, writes this post, and it's headlined, "Old Thinking Permeates Major Journalism School." Now, in her view, NYU was badly out of touch. Its teachings were stale and outmoded. Students were being misdirected, given training suited to old media. They were even required to read the New York Times in print. Fair enough. But her post went beyond strong criticism strongly stated. It also included liberal quotes from the students, who weren't identified by name, and from her professor, who was. One student confided to Taylor during a break in the ladies' room that she was worried the class was too disorganized and confusing. I hate to think what my students say. Taylor castigated her teacher for ill-informed comments about Gen Yers spending too much time online and for a general level of ignorance about new media. So this class session was being closely observed, conversation recorded in notes, the entire proceeding captured and harvested for use in what could only be described, even though Alana Taylor wasn't being paid, as an exercise in online journalism. Plus, it was posted on a website affiliated with one of the country's premier journalism brands.